Episode 5 Billy. Another pirate, a tall man with a long mustache and beard, was having a hard time getting any attention from the ladies. He stood against the wall like a wallflower. He was dressed all in black, and wore a black scarf tied over his long, black hair. He held a bottle of rum in one hand and a sword in his other hand. His name was Billy Bunk. He was 28 years old, and his eyes were such a dark brown that they almost looked black. Billy tried to strike up a conversation with every woman who walked past him. "Hi ladies. This is a swell party. I'm an assistant captain to Captain D," he blurted out in hopes of impressing the women. They all rolled their eyes and walked away except for one. She had long, dark red hair and blue eyes. Her name was Jill Sand. She was 26 years old. "Are you really an assistant captain?" she asked with interest. "I have never heard of an assistant captain before." Billy had a little too much rum to drink and he slurred his words a little bit. "Of course, there's an assistant captain. See? I'm standing right in front of you, and that's what I do." Jill thought that Billy was fun. And she loved his long, dark hair and his long, dark mustache, and his long, dark beard. He seemed so exciting to her. Jill blushed. "Are you at this party alone?" she asked. Billy looked at her and said, "That depends." Jill gave Billy a quizzical look and then a frown. "Well, if you are with someone, then there's no reason for me to talk to you," she quipped. She turned her head and started to walk off. "Wait," Billy said. "Please. I was just trying to make a joke. I anticipated you to ask, on what, and then I was going to say, if you are interested in me." Jill stopped and looked at Billy. "Are you sure that you are not with anyone at this party?" she asked as she crossed her arms. "Positive. Are you married, or dating anyone, or with anyone outside of here?" Jill asked. Billy smiled and said, "No." Jill thought that she saw little tears starting to form in Billy's eyes. She studied his expression. His jovial mood had turned to one of sadness. "Say it to me again," Jill said. "What you said after I asked, 'Are you at this party alone?'" Billy smiled and said, "That depends." "On what?" Jill asked. "On if you would like to be with me." Jill felt a hot flush rise over her. "You said that a little different this time." She looked into Billy's eyes. Billy felt a rush of heat as well. "Did I?" Jill nodded. "Before you said that you were going to say, 'If you are interested in me,' but you changed it to, 'If you would like to be with me.' Is that bad?" Billy asked as he took 2 steps towards Jill. Jill shook her head. It was very sexy. Billy took another step towards Jill. He was now standing in front of her. He looked at her soft, red lips and then back at her eyes. Jill looked at Billy's mouth and then into his eyes. "I've never been kissed by a pirate before." "That's good," Billy said with a soft smile. "Good?" Jill asked. "Yes. You see, my lady, if you allow me to be your first, I assure you that I will take very good care to kiss you quite properly." Billy looked at Jill. His heart was beating faster. Jill's heart started to beat faster as well. "I think I would love to know your kiss, sir." Billy chuckled inwardly and smiled outwardly. No one had called him, sir, before. Episode 6. The Proposal. Billy held out his hand to Jill. "Then may I accompany you to the back balcony, my lady, where we can stand amongst the stars and look out at the moon over the open seas?" Jill smiled and said, "Yes, my lord. It would please me very much." Jill put her hand in Billy's hand. Billy walked Jill to the back balcony, which happened to be vacant. He walked her over to the large banister and stood. They looked out at the moon that hung low over the sea, and also looked up at the stars. "'Tis very beautiful here," Billy said with a smile. A pirate could get used to making this lovely town his port. Jill smiled at Billy. She hadn't thought about how long or how often he would be out to sea, but she was an independent type with lots of things to do and wouldn't mind. And it would be so exciting to be with a pirate, that it would be worth the bouts of loneliness. It is a beautiful place here. I should love if you would consider it to be your main port, my lord. Billy smiled and took both of Jill's hands in his as he faced her. There was a soft and gentle breeze blowing, and it brought the lovely scent of nearby jasmine flowers. Billy pulled Jill close to him until their bodies touched. He wasn't a worldly pirate, and he suddenly felt nervous as he looked into her eyes. Jill waited for his kiss, and the delay worried her. "Did my lord change his mind about the kiss?" she asked with big, doe eyes. Billy smiled and blushed a little. He looked at Jill's chin, for he couldn't bring himself to look into her eyes to make his confession. "It has been a long while for me, my lady. And I have never been a man of the world." Jill grinned and pulled her right hand from Billy's grasp. She rested her hand on his face and said, "Thou wilt make me very happy to be the one to break a long dry spell for you, my lord." Billy laughed and grinned. He let go of Jill's left hand and rested his hand under her chin. He gently tilted her head up, and softly kissed her lips. Jill lost her breath for a moment and swooned. His kiss was as sweet as honey. "That was a sweet kiss, my lord," she said with her eyes still closed. "Perhaps, if it pleases you, you may find my ruby lips again." Before Jill could say anything else, Billy gently pressed his lips against hers. This time, he gave her a lot more than a single, simple kiss. Billy could feel Jill swoon beneath his masculinity, and he quickly put his right hand at the small of her back to hold her up and to keep her close to him. A few moments later, he pulled back from his kiss and breathed several deep breaths of sea air. "Did my kiss please you, my lady?" Billy asked. Jill opened her eyes and laid her head on Billy's strong chest. "Aye, my lord. It did please me very much. Shall I make you my wife?" Billy asked. Jill took her head off of Billy's chest and looked at him. She smiled and said, "That would please me very much, my lord." Billy smiled and held Jill tightly. "I shall buy you the finest house available in town." Jill smiled. She lived with her mother and father still. She wondered if her father would approve. Just as Jill and Billy were deep in thought in each other's arms, Captain D and Grace came out to the balcony. Episode 7. Marriages. "Hello, Billy. I hope that we aren't interrupting anything," Captain D said with a smile. "It's such a beautiful evening, that I wanted to show Grace the view." Billy smiled. "It is a lovely evening." He looked at Jill and smiled. Captain D looked at Grace. "My lady, I would like you to meet my assistant captain, Billy." Grace looked at Billy and gave a small curtsy. "It is nice to meet you, my lord." Captain D looked at Jill and asked, "And who is this lovely lady?" Billy and Jill were still in an embrace. Billy looked at Captain D and then at Jill. "'Tis my new lady, Jill," he said with a smile as he looked into her eyes. Captain D gave Jill a small bow and said, "'Tis nice to meet you, Jill." Jill looked at Captain D and gave him a curtsy. "'Tis nice to meet you as well, Captain D." Captain D gave Billy a knowing look. "Do I hear wedding bells on the horizon?" he asked as he looked at Billy and Jill, who were obviously in love. Billy grinned as he kept his gaze on Jill. "If my lady will have me," he said with a smile. Jill blushed and whispered loudly, "I wouldn't have it any other way, my lord." Jill gave Billy the look a woman gives a man when she is setting her boundaries firmly. Billy caught on and gave a full belly laugh. "Don't worry, my lady, you have my honor as a gentleman pirate that I will protect your honor by taking your hand in marriage." Billy leaned forward and took Jill's hand in his and kissed it. Jill giggled and blushed. She was suddenly feeling young and shy since Captain D and Grace came out to the balcony. Billy brought Jill's hand up to his lips and kissed it again as he looked into her eyes. "Why don't we go back inside and get some punch, so Captain D and Grace may enjoy this beautiful evening alone?" Jill smiled and nodded her head. Billy looked at Captain D and Grace and nodded his head. He held Jill's hand and walked her back inside. Billy poured them each a glass of punch that was spiked with rum, and then they sat at one of the tables and talked while they drank their punch and listened to the music that was playing. In the meantime, Captain D felt rejuvenated. He looked at Grace. She was looking out at the water. "You're so beautiful, my lady." Grace looked at Captain D and said, "I am glad that you think so, my lord." She studied his face for a moment as he studied hers. "Do I please you, my lord?" she asked. "Yes, my lady. You do please me very much." Captain D held out his hand to Grace. Grace looked at Captain D's hand and rested hers upon his. He drew her to him and held her close. "May I kiss you, Grace?" he asked with a raised eyebrow. "It would please me very much, my lord," Grace said. Captain D rested his lips on Grace's and kissed her in a most romantic way. Grace felt so much chemistry and warmth with Captain D, that she was surprised that they didn't have steam rising. Captain D looked at Grace again as he kept her close to him. "Wilt thou marry me, my lady?" he asked. I will," Grace said softly. She swooned. Captain D took a deep breath. "We had better get back inside, my lady. I have to get back to my ship. Will you be joining me?" "If it pleases you, my lord," Grace said. "It would please me very much," Captain D said as he led Grace back inside. Captain D found the host of the party and said, "I had a lovely time, but I have a prior engagement, so I must bid farewell. Thank you for the buffet." Captain D was feeling quite content and emphasized and exaggerated the word, buffet. Within a week, Captain D and Grace were married, and Billy and Jill were wed as well. They all lived a fun and exciting life on Captain D's ship.